Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Gwilda Wiyaka's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the Science of Magic or endorsed in any manner by Gwilda Wiyaka, Relmar McConnell Media Company, its affiliated networks, stations, or employees. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. We can also be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring the tracks of our lives. Most people give hands little thought. They're useful servants, one at the end of each arm, and are pretty much taken for granted. Beyond the occasional glance to see if someone's wearing a wedding band or making sure we shake the right rather than the left upon introduction, many people give others' hands very little notice either. Others, like myself, are fascinated by hands, both with our own and those of others. My theory is that some people are naturally more sensitive to energy, and the sensitive ones, whether consciously or unconsciously, read the energy of a person's hands through sight or touch or both. To one degree or another, energy moves through everyone's hands. The meridians in our hands relate to the organs in our body, among many other things, and create pathways which in turn dictate the lines and demarcations particular to each of us. How we live our lives, how we connect to the world, and how we interact with those around us dictates the divination of power or frequency running through our hands at any given time. This, in turn, creates a map of where we will be going if we do not change direction, as well as the overall tendencies we inherited from our lineage. Everything we think, intend, or believe, or feel leaves a trail in the combination of the delicate course of our lives that can be traced in the maps created by the lines of our hands. I'm a teacher of the shamanic arts. One of my students, when introducing me to his best friend, said, "This is my teacher, Gwilda, but if you don't want her to know everything about you, right down to your shoe size, for gosh sake, don't touch her." His friend laughed and shook my hand. I looked him straight in the eye and said, 10.5 wide. First, he looked at me with a blank expression, and then, well, I've never seen the total color leave a person's face so fast in my entire life. I was just making a wild guess to be funny, I think. The young man ended up joining my school and graduating with honors. He now works as a shamanic practitioner helping many people. However, he's refused to shake my hand since, and a hug is totally out of the question. Who's to know if I actually read his shoe size in his hand? To this day, I've left him wondering what else I may have learned about him. There are numerous ancient and modern practices from palmistry to biofeedback techniques that read the information that can be found in the energy running through our hands. Years ago, one of my dear friends was a student of palmistry and loved to practice on me. She told me I was her favorite guinea pig because my hands seemed to change a lot where other people's were fairly consistent. My friend asked her teacher about my ever-changing hands and was told it's not that common, but she had heard of it. My friend used to share things with me like, "See this line here? It indicates you're very intelligent." "It lies," I would joke. Though when in college and studying psychology, I underwent extensive intelligence testing and always rated very high. So high, in fact, that my profs used me as an example for other students as they were learning to run the tests. The profs would also run new testing methods on me to see how well they worked on the upper levels. Thus, the great frequency of testing I endured. I've always been a little embarrassed about being different, so I never mentioned this to anyone, and I'm sure I never told my friend. Yet, consistently, she could see it in my hand. One day she was reading my hand and suddenly became very distressed. She made the excuse that she was suddenly feeling ill and left quite abruptly. I was worried about her and decided not to disturb her that day, but planned on calling her the next evening after work. I never made it to work that day. I was in a car accident that nearly took my life. She later explained to me that when she'd been reading my palm that day, my lifeline had been greatly reduced and a new line cut through it. She did not want to say anything to me until consulting her teacher. Right, now, at the end of this break, I'm going to introduce our new guest this hour, Ellen Goldberg, who will shed some light on the mysteries of palmistry.
One people, one nation, searching through the night. One people, one nation, searching for the light. One people, one nation, coming from the stars. One people, one nation, to heal this earth of ours.
This is Gwilda Wiyaka, host of The Science of Magic. Each week I explore topics of shamanism, healing, magic, and so much more. The Science of Magic is heard Saturdays and Sundays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 Eastern on the Mutual Broadcast Network.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Ellen Goldberg, an internationally known teacher of tarot and palmistry and the author of The Art and Science of Hand Reading. Ellen is an internationally known teacher of tarot and palmistry. She's the founder and director of the School of Oracles. Ellen served as both the writer and palmistry illustrator for her book, The Art and Science of Hand Reading. This remarkable work is based on over 40 years of experience in teaching palmistry. She may be contacted at goldberg.ellen@icloud.com. Welcome to the show, Ellen, and thanks for joining us on The Science of Magic.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be with you, Gwilda.
I'm really happy to have you here because this is not a subject I'm very well educated in. So, in order for us all to start out on the same page here, would you mind explaining to me and our listeners what palmistry actually is?
Palmistry is one of the great tools that the mystery of the universe, the Great Spirit, has given to us in order to have a more fulfilling life and to know ourselves better. As everyone who's listening has noticed, planet Earth is not necessarily an easy place. But this life, this journey we make, does not have to be made by ourselves. And life has given us these remarkable aids, especially the hand, which we as spiritual palmists call it God's roadmap, or if you were just a purely scientific palmist, and either would do quite well, we call it a map of the brain. And so the hand is a mirror. Palmistry is a means of self-reflection, understanding yourself, and the ability to take part in our ever-changing destiny. I particularly was impressed when I heard you mention that your hands changed a good deal, Gwilda, and just without even having seen your hands, I could imagine that you have part of the mount of the moon well developed in the lower bottom corner of the hand. Maybe it's even pink down in that corner, because no one loves change as much as the archetype of the moon. And we are made of combinations of the 7 ancient planetary archetypes, and so the hand reflects us back to ourselves.
That's pretty amazing. How long has palmistry been around?
Palmistry, well, there's no way 100% to date it, but considering that we see some of the cave drawings in France from maybe 30,000 years before Christ, signed with hands, that they are an important part of the figures and of the drawings, we understand that people from earliest time in prehistory used the hands as signature, maybe understanding that they were unique to themselves, or perhaps they were used as magical talismans in the drawings as well. We know that in Greek and Roman times, Aristotle wrote on palmistry, that great leaders, he wrote a book for his student Alexander the Great. We see that the Chinese and from India, people used it from at least 2,000 or 3,000 years before Christ, and that the Chinese had an identification system based on fingerprints 1,000 years before we did in the West. So it's been part of us always.
So it's pretty hard to tell where it originated, it sounds like.
It really is very difficult. If I were to, first of all, you know the idea of the collective unconscious, that we all have a personal unconscious, plus there is the great collective unconscious at a deeper level by which we are all united. And how great ideas whose time has come can pop up in the minds of people all around the world simultaneously. For instance, in the late 1800s, 3 different surgeons in 3 parts of the world all discovered open heart surgery. The time was right. I think it is something like this for palmistry, something that is universal, can have its genesis in more than one place, because here in the West we derive a great deal from Arabic palmistry that the Crusaders brought back to Europe after visiting the Holy Lands. We know that in India there are injunctions in some of the oldest scriptures in the world, in the Vedas, we're talking 1,000 years BC, where they say to the monks, oh, it is not right to read palms for money if you are a monk. Just by that, we know it was already a profession 1,000 years BC, that people were reading palms for money.
That's pretty impressive. How do you explain it as a science?
Well, it's both. This is probably just in accord with your radio show, which mingles together both the magic of life and science, because, you know, the mind, first of all, both Voltaire and Goethe called hands in their own way the outside brain. There are more nerves between the hand and the brain than in any other part of the nervous system. And not only that, they're made from the same stem cells, so that they have a tremendous unity. And every thought has a chemistry. You know how it is. You walk down the street and suddenly there's a strange shadow and a shot of fear goes through you for a second, and the adrenaline is pumping in no time flat. Then you realize, oh, it's just a plastic bag caught on a tree, but the chemistry has been released. And even though that is a grosser example, every thought has a chemistry, and the terminus, because of the amount of nerves going to the hands, the terminus for these impulses is in the hands, and therefore it creates the shapes and the lines. Plus, we all know the universe is mental. Every mystical tradition has some sort of teaching regarding that, in the way the Buddha said, with your thoughts you make your world, or the way Christ said, as a man or woman thinketh in their heart, so shall they be. And we know, as a New Age aphorism, energy follows thought. So therefore, it is the mind which is considered to be the doer and mover of all things. It is the mind that writes the lines and the shapes. Change your mind, as you must have done many times, and you change your hand. Change who you are, change your thinking, change your habits, and the dominant hand, which is an up-to-date, I think of it as a biological computer readout, an up-to-date, concise reflection back of where you are now. The recessive hand hardly changes at all. maybe a little bit, maybe slowly over time. So we consider that to show us the qualities given at birth. But the dominant hand can change quick as a wink, and it changes every time you change.
That's kind of goes into my next question, which is how does one hand differ from the other? So, does the dominant hand and the recessive hand, is that dependent on whether you're left-handed or right-handed?
Completely so. If you are left-handed, then it's the left that you would read for now and into the future. And if you're right-handed, you would read that for now and into the future as of now. Remember, there's always a fate at any given moment, but that fate is fluid. It is not carved in stone. The recessive hand shows the qualities given at birth. The dominant hand, if I'm doing a short palm reading, I concentrate on the dominant hand. But in a long reading, I always spend time with the recessive because everything that is in there is ours somewhere down in the unconscious, and there may be untapped talents. The two hands are many times quite similar, but to a trained eye, you will see the differences and see where people have evolved and also what has not been made use of, and that is still there for them to mine so easily as it was given at birth.
Speaking of birth, have you ever worked on the hands of identical twins, and how does that work?
I have worked on the hands of identical twins, and one of them is a very good friend of mine, and we met because I met him and his brother in the elevator at the Whitney Museum, and I said, "Oh, let me see your hands." And they always would say that by the time we'd gone from the 5th floor down to the 1st floor, I had delineated their subtle differences with great accuracy. Now, it's harder for an astrologer because those identical twins have practically the same chart. And I, who am also an astrologer and a teacher of tarot and the Western mystery tradition, we know that everyone is uniquely different. And the way the soul interacts with a chart is different. The stars give our possibilities, but not the absolute, although, goodness gracious, to see the hands and the chart together is a marvel. Because through the law of correspondence, they reflect each other and augment the information. But how does one see the differences between twins? It's the hands, because the dominant hand, will change, remember, as the person changes, and so it is a up-to-the-moment record of each of them as unique beings. And boy, do twins ever appreciate that.
I'll bet they do. So their hands, does the recessive hand differ from each other, even though that's more of what they came in with?
That's a very good question. No one has ever asked me that question before, Gwilda. In fact, there will be subtle differences. They have things in common. And you know how sometimes one twin is stronger than the other? One twin may have a stronger vitality or maybe is slightly larger than the other, even if they're identical. The hands will reflect that too. So even subtle differences at birth are present.
That's amazing. We're going to have to take a little break here. This is getting really intriguing. We'll pick up on the other side of this break. We'll return to our discussion after this short break, and you're listening to The Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Do you want to hear more? Other innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common: They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. We can be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Ellen Goldberg, an internationally known teacher of tarot and palmistry and the author of The Art of Science of Hand Reading. Her contact information is goldberg.ellen@icloud.com. Welcome back, Ellen.
Thank you, Gwilda.
Hey, we were just starting to have fun with identical twins and the differences in their hand as in regards to palmistry. And I found it really interesting how you brought up the point that identical twins having such close birthdays, their hands are more telling than their astrological chart. Now, this is kind of off, but have perchance you ever had the experience of working with mirror twins?
What are mirror twins? I do not know that term.
Oh, they're not that common, and that's why I thought it was going to be an off chance. What mirror twins are is identical twins, except they're the mirror image of each other. So the dominant hand on one would be the recessive hand on the other. They even tend to be one left-handed and one right, even though they're identical in every other way. So I just, on the off chance, thought you might have played with some of that. But I'll bet that would be interesting to look at.
I haven't met any yet, but I am now going to ask around about that because it sounds fascinating.
It does to me too, yeah. Yeah, I knew one set. They were very interesting people. So when you're comparing between the two hands of just regular people, what does that comparison tell you, Ellen?
It tells me whether people have stayed close to their original birth pattern or whether they have changed in any significant way. Some people have overcome enormous difficulties and challenges, and you can see that in the current hand. Other people have untapped resources and talents, and it is such a pleasure to tell people about those things because here would be an area of something where the mind would just take to it. The abilities in that area of life would be inborn, and so in some very relatively easy way, they could absorb or go into a certain body of knowledge or creativity that will be natural for them. What happiness it is to give people that kind of news.
Yes, to be able to show someone a potential they have that they may have never known about, that would be rewarding. Have you ever experienced working with people that have had or claim to have had walk-ins during their life?
No, that has not been my experience. So I have not read for someone, although I have met people who have experienced walk-ins. This was in years past. I remember there was a period of time here in my region of the country when there was a lot of talk and experience about that going on. There may have been a big wave of it back, I would think, in the 80s and early 90s.
That would be an interesting one to see if you'd been able to see somebody before and after such an event.
I totally can. I have read for people who have experienced contact, either been taken up to another realm or feel as though they experience, an interior contact from another realm. And many of those people have the psychic part of the hand well developed, and it may be that they are extra sensitive and so open to receiving these vibrations.
Okay. So because the hand shows their psychic abilities is probably what's perceiving these more esoteric experiences. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I mean.
All right. You know, I love it when they used to in the hospital when a baby was first born, they'd put prints on their little hands and feet and put their footprints and handprints on their little birth certificate. So we're born with lines on our hands and feet. What dictates those patterns?
Well, although I cannot speak so much for the feet, although there certainly are in India feet readers who read the lines and symbols on the feet, but I have not gone there. But the body loves to put in miniature the entire body or an entire system of knowledge in a small space. Just like if you ever had your iris read by an iridologist, you would have known more about your health than you ever even wanted to know. An acupuncturist can find the entire body right on the earlobe, or the whole ear. And there's an acupressure point for every part of the body there. The hand reflects the entire mind. Now, although the adult hand does not appear to form until, I would say, at least 10 to 12 years old, but there are things that you can see from the moment of birth. The hand will be changing. All babies' hands are much more sensual than adult hands, except for those few who stay in the realm of the senses in a strong way. But mostly there will be changes in shapes. But the relative size of the thumb in relationship to the palm, are they going to be strong-willed and ruled by reason, or small-thumbed, weaker-willed and ruled by emotion and their heart? Or how long is the headline for the amount of intelligence? Or is it tied or, to the lifeline at the beginning or never touch? For are people very independent thinkers, or do they care more about the opinion of others? Certain things you can see from the moment of birth, and it is helpful, even though it's not going to be the final say. But then, of course, when is the final say, considering, well, of course, there's much that is final or set, by the time we're 12. But since we can always change, the hand and the nature of can always evolve, right? This is one of the events of being here with an incarnation on this planet is that it's a school and we're constantly learning. But certain things are given to us right away.
Well, if you're looking at a baby's hands, say a newborn, and so, of course, you would be advising the parents, are you able to give them kind of guidelines as to what to expect or the best way to handle this particular personality?
Absolutely. Now, remember, we will not see everything at birth, but there are things, like, for instance, just that I talked about, is the headline, that is the center transverse line across the middle of the palm. Is it touching the lifeline, the line that goes round the thumb, that encircles the thumb? If they are touching just a little bit, this is within normal range. But if those two lines run together as one until almost near under the space of the middle finger, that child needs to be encouraged to think independently and not to cling to the mother's apron strings, and to have good self-esteem, all of which will be challenges with an overly long tie between the headline and the lifeline. If the lines never touch, they need to understand they have an independent child on their hand. And when that child says no, or wants to go exploring, or wants to take up something new, it's because they have their own unique way of seeing the world and should be encouraged and honored for that. So it's constantly giving people clues to how the child, where it needs support, where it should be encouraged. Of course, I must say the birth chart here does come in an exquisite way, and it wouldn't matter whether it was for twins, because they have much in common, or whether it was for a single birth. the chart shows you the blueprint the soul came in with, and I adore doing charts. Of course, when people come to my home, I read by Skype and by phone all over the world. But if people are in range of New York City, then for me to sit with their birth chart in my lap while I look at their hands is my delight, because there is that law of correspondence here in the universe, and everything is telling not contradictory stories, but similar stories. And then you see the uniformity of the consciousness of the universe, and it has gone for each one of us.
I really want to go further on this one too. I can't imagine putting the two together and how much more it would show. We are going to have to take another break here. We will be back on the flip side of this short break. You are listening to The Science of Magic, the place where artistic professionals of science and the esoteric create common ground for the betterment of our world. This is Gwilda Wiyaka, host of The Science of Magic. Each week I explore topics of shamanism, healing, magic, and so much more. The Science of Magic is heard Saturdays and Sundays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 Eastern on the Mutual Broadcast Network.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, bringing together gifted people of service to the world. We can be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Ellen Goldberg, an internationally known teacher of tarot and palmistry and the author of The Art and Science of Hand Reading. Her contact information, goldberg.ellen@icloud.com. Ellen, welcome back for our final segment here.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were talking about how you can put together a person's astrological chart as well as read their palms and come up with a much more complete picture of where they are, what they're doing, where they're going, what their options are. How much of this is preordained, and how much of it are just the currents that we have a choice to ride as we may?
That's a great question, Gwilda. It's really both. There are things given to us at birth that will be our challenges. Some say the soul chooses the family. Some say the soul chooses lessons that we're going to encounter in this lifetime in the great school of life. I often say they don't call it a university for nothing. The whole universe is our school. But we are the co-creators of our lives if we will take an interest and an active part in it. We see one of the great earliest, well, she's not so early, but she's already gone. Isabel Hickey was a great astrologer in Boston, and she would say the stars impel, they don't compel. So therefore, we see our tendencies that are mapped out for us. And if people go along the lines of least resistance, this is pretty much what is going to happen. I have an enormous interest in astrology as well as in palmistry, And so I watch my transits of the planets, and I do this for my clients as well, to see what the vibration of the planets are for their particular chart. I'm not so interested in the astrology that takes care of, the vibrations of the world or what politics or the stock market is doing. There are people who have those interests. But I am fascinated by the effect of the transiting planets on people's lives. And to see them work so well, to see those vibrations show up, whether they are aware of them or not, are totally fascinating. Now, the hand makes use of the archetypes of the 7 planets of the ancients. Of course, the sun and moon are not really planets, but they are the 2 great luminaries, so they use the sun and the moon. When we have a mount of the sun and the moon, the little paddings in the hand are named after them. We have Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, Venus, and Mars as well. Now, those 7 planets in the hand, they correspond not only to those planets in the chart, but through combination to the 3 more recently discovered planets, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, because those are higher octaves of each one of those is a higher octave of one of the original 7 planets. Planet meaning wanderer. They were the great orbs in the sky that early people could see traveling across the heavens. And since they are in both, nothing gives me more pleasure than to see the same story written in both. And then I understand, because I come out of the Western Hermetic tradition, when they say as above, so below, and as within, so without. They put so much on the law of correspondence. To see that law so accurate in action is, awe-inspiring for me. This way I get to see the magic of life working every day.
Absolutely awe-inspiring. Right now we're in a time of intense turmoil. There's a lot going on in our world, and you're sitting down and you're looking at a lot of people's charts and a lot of people's hands. Do you see any correspondence with all the upheaval and trauma going on in the world? Do you see that showing up in your people as well?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer, Gwilda, because in my mind, it's always been a difficult world. It's just that the circumstances change. Yes, now we're going through a period of terrorism, but when was it when we didn't have something like the Mongol hordes overriding Europe, or the Spanish Inquisition, or the torturing of the Christians, or now it's the Arabs and the Jews? People have been going at it. And if it wasn't AIDS, then it was the Black Plague. Or even in 1919 when a pneumonia virus and a flu virus combined, and maybe 20% of the world's population died in a year. My old aunties told me of sitting on the stoop outside the house in Philadelphia and seeing the coffins lined up on this corner on the street every day. In other words, it's always been something.
It has. And I was wondering if the prediction of something large coming or something large going on shows up in the hands. Do you have something for our listeners that you'd like to say in closing?
Not that I wish sadness or trouble on anyone, but it would have been, you don't know in advance who's going to be caught in one of those great cataclysms. And, tsunami or an attack or something happening, to see the hands of so many people. The lifeline doesn't show how long you live. It shows how long energy is a gift. But on rare occasion, it does show how long you live. On rare occasion, I have seen it. I've had the opportunity to look at a hand, see the line, and to know about when the fatality occurred afterwards, and see that's how you learn, only by practice. So would a whole group of people have a similar marking? It's possible.
Absolutely. That's very, very interesting. Do you have, in closing, we're just about out of time, do you have a message for our listeners?
Absolutely. I would say take an active part in your own evolution. The most important line to have clear in the hand is a headline, because since it is our thinking that creates our lives and what we believe, we manifest. Work with your own mind. I used to have a headline that had an island of confusion on it, and I have completely erased that. You cannot even see the ghost of it. Through meditation, through concentration, we build the muscle of the brain and clear the mind. 10 or 20 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day of study of something can make you practically a world expert in 5 years. And I'd like to just say that it is endlessly a delight to me to understand that the word medicine and the word meditation come from the same Sanskrit and Latin roots, mediere, to find the right inner balance, so that meditation is medicine for the mind. Work with your own thinking, and you can change your life. And it also occurs to me to say that Carl Jung, who I respect so much, the great transpersonal therapist.
Oh, Ellen, I'm so sorry. We are out of time. Thanks again for being with us. This has been The Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to this and other thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge, comforted with love, and may the tracks of your lives be beautiful ones.
One people, one nation, searching through the night. One people, one nation, searching for the light. One people, one nation.